Today's cryptic crossword clue is blank white squares in a box, the first of tricky problems. And this clue comes to us from one of our members, Cian. Thank you, Cian. I love how self-referential this clue is because it does seem to be talking about crosswords. And maybe this is exactly what faced you if you solved this clue at Minute Cryptic, where you just start by looking at a bunch of blank white squares and it's the start of a tricky problem for you, hopefully a satisfying problem. But I found this clue satisfying and I did find it tricky. There's so much that could be going on, like maybe blank suggests we take the insides out. There's squares, there's in a box. Maybe you put some stuff in a box. I don't know. You've got the first of tricky problems. There's so much. Where do you start? I can't help you. No, I can. But it is hard. I think there is one trick here that I think is probably the most helpful trick, which is the word problems, because the word problems is a plural word. It ends with an S. And so that means that if problems is our definition, our wordplay will have to end with an S. And so if you look back before problems, or even if it's tricky problems, that would be a plural definition. And so the answer would almost certainly end with an S. Where are you getting the S from? And you look through the whole clue, it's pretty hard to find an S that could go at the end of the wordplay. Maybe squares, but if you're doing anything with squares in wordplay, you're probably putting it in a box. So the S from whatever squares would be doesn't end up at the end of the answer. It's in a word for a box. So that seems very hard. But if problems is part of the wordplay, then problems or its substitute will end with an S, very likely. And so then you think, well, maybe the definition is plural on the other end. And you see blank white squares. You think, well, that's plural. Maybe the definition is blank white squares. And then we've got wordplay that's something like the first of tricky problems, and we need to substitute problems with a synonym that also ends with an S. I know that sounds like a lot. I know it sounds hard. I think this is a hard clue, but that is how I would think about it. That's how I did think about it. And the wordplay here actually is the first of tricky problems, and our definition is blank white squares in a box. And even as I say that, maybe you get it straight away. I think it's one of those definitions where either you get it or you don't, and then you have to work really hard. But anyway, the wordplay is the first of tricky problems. And the first of tricky, the first letter of the word tricky, is a T. And then after that, you've got a substitute for the word problems. Can we think of blank white squares in a box, a word for that starts with T? You might be able to find the word tissues. Tissues are blank white squares in a box. And that means that our wordplay is the first of tricky for T and issues as a substitute for problems, giving us tissues, which are blank white squares in a box.